He spent his life upholding the law, respected, admired, trusted. But when suspicion crept into his home, even a judge couldn't see the truth. And by the time he did, it was far too late. If you had asked anyone in Willow Creek who Judge Caleb Morris was, they would have said the same thing: fair, brilliant, deeply principled. He wasn't just a man of the law. He was the law. The kind of man who still believed justice meant something. The kind of man who stood when a woman entered the room, shook hands with both palms, and never missed Sunday service. His courtroom was quiet, efficient, respected. And his home? Even more so. Nestled on a tree-lined street with trimmed hedges and white shutters, the Morris household looked like something straight out of a Norman Rockwell painting. Jasmine, his wife of 5 years, was due any day now. Their first child, a boy. They'd already picked a name: Malachi. Caleb had built everything with intention. From his education to his career, even the timing of their pregnancy. It was all carefully, methodically chosen. He used to say, "Control the process, and you control the outcome." It worked in the courtroom. It worked in life. Until it didn't. Caleb didn't always believe in control. He learned it. He was 8 when he first understood what chaos looked like. His father drunk on the porch, shouting at the wind, daring God to strike him down. His mother stood in the kitchen, staring blankly at a pot of boiling water, refusing to flinch when the shouting turned to something worse. In the Morris household, silence wasn't just a habit. It was survival. His father believed discipline was love, swift, loud, and final. There were no second chances, no soft landings. Caleb once brought home a report card with a B in math. He didn't eat for 2 days. His dad said, "The world doesn't care about your almost." And his mother? She never said a word, just refilled his water glass and looked away. So Caleb stopped crying. He stopped asking questions. Instead, he studied. He read. He planned. He learned that if he could anticipate every variable, if he could eliminate surprise, then maybe, just maybe, he wouldn't have to feel powerless again. By the time he turned 16, he had mapped out his entire life. College, law school, clerkship, judgeship. Every step was a brick in a wall he built around himself. A fortress of certainty to keep the chaos out. Love didn't fit neatly into that wall. When Jasmine came into his life, laughing, impulsive, soft where he was steel, she was everything he hadn't planned for. And yet, he clung to her like a man gripping a lifeline. Because she didn't just see him, she saw through him. And for the first time, that didn't terrify him. It made him hope. But hope is fragile when built on a foundation of fear. So when Aaron entered the picture, all charm and ease and unpredictability, it wasn't just jealousy Caleb felt. It was panic. The old terror of being unworthy, unseen, unloved, crept back in like smoke under a locked door. He didn't want to lose Jasmine. But more than that, he didn't want to become his father. Jasmine was everything he wasn't: soft where he was stern, warm where he was structured. A preschool teacher with an easy laugh and a heart too big for her own good. She could walk into a room and light it up without saying a word. Caleb loved that about her. It also terrified him, not because of who she was, but because of how deeply he needed her. More than he'd ever admit. When she got pregnant, he cried. Not in front of her, of course, but alone in the bathroom, gripping the sink so tightly the porcelain cracked. For a man like Caleb, raised in a house where affection was rationed and silence was currency, becoming a father felt like a second chance at life. Everything was perfect, until his little brother showed up. Aaron had always been the opposite of Caleb. Carefree, impulsive, charming in a way that made women laugh and men clench their jaws. While Caleb went to law school, Aaron bounced between jobs, relationships, and towns. He was the cool uncle, the drifter with stories and a guitar. So when he lost his apartment and needed a place to stay for a few months, Jasmine didn't hesitate. "Of course he can stay," she said one evening, hands on her belly, smiling. "It'll be good for him. Maybe we can help." Caleb didn't say no. He never did with Jasmine. And truthfully, he felt a duty, as a brother, and as a man of his position, to offer grace. So Aaron moved into the guest room above the garage. The first few weeks were fine. Aaron offered to cook, helped with groceries, even drove Jasmine to her appointments when Caleb was stuck in court. It felt decent, like old times. Caleb even caught himself laughing over dinner. But then there were the small things. One night, Caleb came home to find Aaron and Jasmine on the couch, watching an old movie, her head resting slightly on his shoulder. Another time, he walked in just as Aaron whispered something that made Jasmine laugh. Laugh in that way she used to laugh with him. Harmless, maybe, but something in Caleb's chest shifted. He told himself not to think like that. Jasmine would never. Aaron would never. But as he laid in bed at night, staring at the ceiling fan spinning like a slow verdict, doubt began to take root. Tiny at first, then deeper. He started waking up earlier, pretending to read the paper just to observe how they interacted over breakfast. He noticed how Jasmine lit up when Aaron entered the room, how Aaron seemed more relaxed around her than he'd ever been. Caleb had seen enough infidelity cases to know how things began. The stolen glances, the prolonged touches, the inside jokes. But this was different, wasn't it? He tried to brush it off, to lean on reason, to remember that he, of all people, should wait for evidence. But suspicion isn't rational. It doesn't knock politely. It kicks the door in and makes itself at home. And so, the perfect life Caleb had spent years building, brick by careful brick, began to crack. Not because of what he knew, but because of what he thought he saw. Because even a judge can be wrong. It started with little things. Innocent, maybe, but not to Caleb. A late-night laugh echoing down the hallway. A half-eaten bowl of ice cream in the sink. Jasmine hadn't touched sweets in weeks. A hoodie that wasn't his hanging on the back of the kitchen chair, smelling faintly of her lavender detergent. To anyone else, these were meaningless details. But Caleb noticed everything. That's what made him a good judge. He saw patterns where others saw noise. And now, in his own home, the details no longer added up. He began to catalog moments in his mind like courtroom evidence. Exhibit Jasmine humming softly in the kitchen, only stopping when Aaron walked in. Exhibit B, Aaron's text on Jasmine's phone. Don't forget, 10 a.m., smiley face. Exhibit C, a bottle of prenatal vitamins moved from the bathroom to the guest room. He never asked. Not directly. Caleb believed in restraint. But inside, something was shifting, tightening. The calm, collected exterior he wore like a tailored suit began to wrinkle with tension. At dinner, Jasmine would talk about her students, the baby, the weather. Caleb would nod and smile, eyes flicking to Aaron across the table. Sometimes Aaron laughed too hard at her jokes. Sometimes he didn't look at Caleb at all. And then one night it happened. Caleb came home early from chambers. The lights were low, the living room glowing with the flicker of the television. Jasmine and Aaron were on the couch, her head tilted toward him, their knees almost touching. They jumped apart when he entered. Hey, Jasmine smiled, startled. You're home early. Aaron stood up too quickly, mumbling something about taking out the trash. Caleb didn't say a word. He just walked past them, heart pounding in his ears. In the bathroom, he splashed cold water on his face and stared into the mirror, wondering if he was losing his mind. But the next morning, Jasmine was back to making pancakes. Aaron was helping clean out the garage, and everything looked normal. Too normal. That day, Caleb skipped court and drove to the electronics store. He bought 2 discrete cameras and a motion-triggered recorder. He told himself it wasn't spying, it was protecting. Judges are trained to see both sides. But husbands? Husbands see what they fear. He installed the cameras in the hallway and kitchen. One in the living room, never in the bedroom. He told himself he still had lines he wouldn't cross. That night, he watched the footage like it was case evidence. For hours, minute by minute. Nothing. The next day, more the same. Chores, cooking, casual conversation. No touching, no intimacy, no betrayal. But Caleb kept watching, because even if he couldn't see it, he felt it. One afternoon, Jasmine returned from a prenatal appointment. Caleb had meant to go with her, but a last-minute court scheduling kept him away. She said Aaron had offered to drive her instead. You should have seen the baby on the ultrasound, she smiled, resting her hand on her belly. He kept moving his arms, like he's already stubborn like you. Caleb forced a smile, but inside his thoughts raced. What if that child isn't like me at all? What if he's Aaron's? The idea felt absurd, and yet it wouldn't leave. It nestled in his mind like a parasite, feeding on silence and speculation. He started noticing changes in Jasmine, too. She'd get quiet when he entered the room. Her phone was always face down. She didn't initiate affection anymore. When he touched her shoulder in bed, she flinched, not from pain, but from something else. Something colder. One night, while reviewing footage, he saw Aaron pick up Jasmine's phone from the counter, read something, and smile. He put it back without a word. That moment, that smile, burned into Caleb's brain. He didn't sleep that night. He sat at the kitchen table until dawn, staring at a note Jasmine had left beside a plate of banana bread. Eat something. Love you always. Love you always. But who was the you now? In court the next morning, Caleb couldn't focus. A domestic violence case was unfolding in front of him. A husband who'd accused his wife of cheating, only to later discover it was all in his head. As the defense lawyer made his closing statement, Caleb felt sweat drip down his back. Suspicion is not truth, Your Honor. Obsession is not evidence. The words echoed louder than the gavel in his hand. By the time he got home that evening, he'd made a decision. He needed proof. Real proof. Or closure. He upgraded the cameras. Added audio. Began checking Jasmine's phone when she showered, Aaron's backpack when he was out. Every day felt like surveillance. Every smile from Jasmine felt like a secret. Every word from Aaron felt like a lie. But worst of all, every reflection Caleb saw of himself didn't look like a judge anymore. It looked like a man unraveling. In court, Caleb Morris was known for his poise. His voice never wavered, even in the face of raw grief, damning testimony, or heated arguments. But back home, behind the walls of that pristine white-shuttered house, he was someone else entirely. He was a man watching his own life like a surveillance tape, rewinding, slowing down frames, squinting for signs. At first, the cameras had been a precaution, a way to confirm or dismiss what his gut was telling him. But now, they were his obsession. Every night, long after Jasmine had gone to sleep, Caleb would sit in his study with a glass of whiskey, something he hadn't touched in years, and watch. Rewatch. Zoom in. Pause. The problem was, there was nothing conclusive. Jasmine and Aaron never kissed, never touched inappropriately, never even spent more than a few minutes alone in a room. But there was something between them. An ease, a warmth, a silent language that Caleb felt excluded from. And that hurt more than any affair ever could. He began documenting everything. Times, dates, gestures, tone of voice. A legal pad filled with what he called behavioral inconsistencies. To an outsider, it might have looked like the ravings of a paranoid man. But to Caleb, it was evidence. She laughed at his joke, 11:07 a.m., touched his arm, unsure if accidental, 3:18 p.m. Both returned from store, Jasmine's hair damp. Rain? Shower. He started tracking their whereabouts with a GPS app he secretly installed on Aaron's phone. When he saw them drive to a baby store together, he sat in his car across the street and watched them from behind tinted windows. Jasmine held up a tiny onesie. Aaron nodded, smiling. They looked like a couple. That night, Caleb punched a hole in the wall behind the linen closet. He blamed it on a loose shelf. Jasmine asked him, "Are you okay?" He kissed her forehead and said, "Just tired." But it wasn't just tiredness. It was rage. A slow, simmering kind that didn't scream. It calculated. He stopped confiding in anyone. Even his closest friend on the bench, Judge Penwell, noticed. "You've been somewhere else lately," Penwell said one morning. "You need to take a break, Caleb." Caleb forced a smile. "I'm fine." But he wasn't. He was drowning in silence. Even Jasmine's kindness began to feel sinister. She baked his favorite lemon pie. She asked how work was. She rubbed his back when he sat too long at his desk. It all felt strategic, like she was trying to keep him calm, like she knew he knew. And then came the letter, folded neatly, tucked inside one of Aaron's books that had been left on the living room table. Caleb didn't even mean to find it. He was looking for the TV remote when the book slid open. The letter was short, handwritten. "I don't know how much longer we can keep this up. I feel like he's watching me all the time. I'm scared." There was no signature, no names, But the handwriting, it was Jasmine's. Caleb didn't sleep for 2 days. He called in sick to court, sat in his car outside the house, watching the front door, fingers drumming on the steering wheel. When Jasmine texted to ask where he was, he didn't respond. Instead, he opened his glove box and stared at the pistol he hadn't touched in years. He hadn't planned to buy it. It was a spontaneous purchase a few weeks back, a just-in-case. Judges received threats all the time. It wasn't illegal, just precautionary. But now, as his fingers wrapped around the grip, Caleb felt something he hadn't felt since his father's funeral, complete and total clarity. That night, he sat Jasmine down. "I want to talk," he said. She looked startled, then softened. "Of course. What's on your mind?" He hesitated. "Are you happy?" Jasmine blinked. "What kind of question is that?" "A real one." She took a breath. "Yes, Caleb. I'm happy. Tired. A little overwhelmed. But happy. With me?" Her eyes searched his. "Of course with you. Why would you even ask that?" He stood up, paced, hands shaking. "You and Aaron seem close." There it was. The unspoken accusation, now said aloud. Jasmine's face tightened. "He's your brother, Caleb. He's been helping. That's all." "You wrote something," Caleb said, voice rising. "About how I'm watching you. About being scared." Her face turned pale. "You read my journal?" "It was a letter." "No, it was a journal entry. From my therapist. Because you haven't been yourself lately, and I didn't know how to talk to you." His stomach dropped. She stepped toward him. "Caleb, what's going on with you?" But he didn't answer. Because in that moment, Caleb realized something terrifying. He didn't know it was real anymore. The cameras, the notes, the observations. Had he twisted everything? Had his mind, trained for decades to detect guilt and deception, started seeing it where it didn't exist? He looked at Jasmine, pregnant, tired, scared, and felt a surge of shame. Then Aaron walked in the front door, carrying groceries, humming the same tune Jasmine had been humming earlier that morning. And the rage returned, like a switch, like fire through dry leaves. The house was quiet that night, too quiet. Caleb sat alone in the study, lights dimmed, curtains drawn tight. His phone buzzed on the desk. A message from Judge Penwell. "Still thinking about you. Don't let the darkness win." He didn't reply. The darkness had already won. The pistol sat on the desk, next to a stack of court files and the unopened lemon pie Jasmine baked 3 days ago. Its crust was beginning to dry, flaking at the edges like everything else in his life. From the hallway came the soft creak of floorboards. Jasmine's footsteps. He knew them well. Light, measured, like she was always trying not to wake someone. Or now, not to startle someone. She stopped at the door. "Can we talk?" she asked gently. Caleb didn't turn. "I'm listening." She stepped inside, hands folded in front of her belly. Her pregnancy was showing more now. 8 months, maybe a little more. He had stopped counting. "I want Aaron to move out," she said, voice soft. "I think it's time." That caught his attention. He turned toward her slowly, eyes narrowed. "You do?" Jasmine nodded. "I think things feel tense. For all of us. And I don't want to bring our child into that." Caleb stared at her for a long time. "Is it because you're afraid of what I'll do?" "No," she said quickly. "It's because I'm afraid of what we've become." He stood up, crossing the room until they were only a few feet apart. "So you're saying it isn't true? You and him?" Jasmine's eyes filled with tears. "No, Caleb, it was never like that. He's your brother, and I've always loved you. But you haven't looked at me the same in weeks. You haven't touched me. You barely speak to me unless it's a question." She paused, searching his face. "I'm still your wife. I'm still here." Caleb's voice cracked. "Then why do I feel like I'm losing everything?" "Because you've stopped trusting me," she whispered. "And without trust, there's nothing left." For a moment, the silence between them was unbearable. Caleb turned away, breathing hard. "I don't know what's real anymore," he muttered. Behind him, Jasmine took a step closer, her voice trembling now. "I need you to come back to me, Caleb. Not the judge. Not the man who solves everyone else's problems. You, the man I married. The man who cried when he felt Malachi kick for the first time. That name, Malachi. He hadn't spoken it out loud in weeks. The rage inside him didn't vanish, but it wavered. For the first time in days, he felt it. the sliver of humanity he thought he'd lost. And then the front door opened. Aaron's voice floated down the hallway. "Hey, I picked up dinner." Caleb's jaw tightened. Jasmine turned toward the door, and in that moment, that tiny, insignificant moment, something inside Caleb snapped. She smiled. It was instinctive, automatic. Not joy, not love, just recognition. But to Caleb, it was the final straw. The kitchen clock read 8:47 p.m. when Jasmine finally exhaled the breath she'd been holding all day. Aaron was rinsing dishes, sleeves rolled up, humming some half-remembered blues riff. The house felt tighter than usual, every room holding its breath the way Jasmine had been. "Aaron," she said quietly, "can we talk a second?" He shut off the faucet. "Sure. Everything okay?" She glanced down the hallway. Caleb's study door was closed, the amber sliver of desk lamp light glowing beneath it. She lowered her voice anyway. "It's Caleb. I'm worried." Aaron leaned against the counter, brows knitting. "Yeah, I've noticed. He barely looks at me. Half the time I say good morning, he acts like I'm trespassing." "It isn't you," Jasmine whispered. Her hand drifted to her belly, an unconscious shield. "He's scared. Something inside him cracked, and he won't let me close enough to fix it." Aaron sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Jazz, if my being here makes it worse." "No," she cut in. "You helped when we needed it. But now, I think seeing the two of us laugh, even about nothing, feeds whatever story he's telling himself." Aaron's eyes softened with guilt. "I never meant to step on what you guys have. He's my brother. Your family." "I know." She offered a sad smile. "That's why I need your help." He straightened. "Anything. I want to talk to him tomorrow, really talk before the baby comes. But he won't hear me if he's busy monitoring us like evidence. If you could stay at a hotel for a few nights, give us space." Aaron started to object, then stopped. "Yeah, okay, I can do that." She reached out, squeezed his arm. "Thank you." For a moment they just stood there, two people caught in the same storm, praying the levee would hold. Jasmine's voice broke the hush. "Aaron, he loves you. He won't admit it, but he does. If he knew how scared I am right now, it would crush him. Promise me you'll talk to him too. Tell him you never meant." "I promise," Aaron said, eyes shining. First thing tomorrow. Footsteps creaked overhead, Caleb crossing the upstairs hallway. Jasmine and Aaron froze, listening. The steps paused, then retreated toward the study. Jasmine let out a shaky breath. "I should take him some tea. He hasn't eaten." Aaron nodded. "I'll pack tonight, head out first thing." She managed a grateful smile, but tears rimmed her eyes. Maybe this will finally break through. "Hey," Aaron placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You're the strongest person I know. You'll get through to him." Jasmine covered his hand with hers for a heartbeat, no longer than a sister's embrace, then turned away to fill the kettle. Aaron grabbed his phone and wallet, heading to the guest room. Neither of them noticed the tiny red LED above the pantry door, one of Caleb's new cameras, blinking like an impatient signal light. Upstairs, behind a half-closed study door, Caleb sat rigid at his desk, the baby monitor size screen of his surveillance app glowing in the dark. He watched Jasmine touch Aaron's arm, watched their lips move without hearing the words. His chest tightened, each breath a verdict delivered against his own heartbeat. He did not hear Jasmine knock softly a few minutes later, tea in hand, because he had slipped on headphones, rewinding, zooming, cataloging the gestures he'd just witnessed. Outside, the kettle whistle still echoed in his mind like a warning he refused to heed. Down the hall, Jasmine whispered a prayer to the ceiling fan, begging for tomorrow to come before tonight unraveled any further. That night, Caleb waited until the house was still. Jasmine was asleep upstairs, curled on her side with her hands protectively cradling her belly. Aaron had gone to bed in the guest room. Caleb stood in the hallway for a long time, holding the pistol, breathing in the quiet. He didn't plan to kill them. Not yet. What he wanted, what he needed, was truth. A confession. An end to the ambiguity. He could live with heartbreak. He could live with betrayal. But he couldn't live with doubt. So he opened the guest room door slowly, like a judge entering his courtroom. Aaron stirred. "Yo, Caleb. What's up, man?" Caleb stepped inside, raising the gun. Aaron froze. Jesus, what are you doing? I want answers, Caleb said. And I want them now. Aaron sat up, hands raised. Caleb, you're scaring me. You should be scared. I didn't do anything. I swear. Jasmine and I, we never. I've seen the way you look at her. I looked at her because I respect her. Because I care about you. You're my brother, man. My only family. Caleb's hand shook. Aaron kept talking, fast, desperate. You think I betray you? After all you've done for me? You think I'd lie to you under your roof? And that's when Jasmine's voice came from behind. Caleb, stop. She stood in the doorway, eyes wide, one hand braced against the wall. Put the gun down, she said softly. But Caleb didn't, because in her voice he heard pity, not love, not fear. And something about that, about her pitying him, was more than he could bear. The gunshot was loud. The second was louder. When it was over, Caleb stood in the room, breathing hard, eyes glassy. Aaron lay slumped against the bed frame, unmoving. Jasmine collapsed on the floor, blood pooling beneath her. Caleb dropped the gun, fell to his knees, and wept. The ringing in Caleb's ears drowned out everything else. The silence that followed the gunshots was not peaceful. It was deafening, the kind of silence that swells like pressure inside a courtroom just before the verdict is read. Caleb knelt between them. Aaron sprawled lifeless on the bedroom floor, a crimson stain spreading beneath his chest. And Jasmine, gasping, her body trembling as blood soaked through the fabric of her nightgown. Her eyes, those wide, beautiful eyes, locked with his. Caleb, she whispered. Why? But the words barely came out. He pressed his hands to her abdomen, desperately trying to stop the bleeding. Blood coated his fingers, warm and slick. Her belly, once round with promise, now heaved with every shallow breath. No, 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 no. Stay with me, he muttered. Stay with me, Jasmine. He grabbed his phone with shaking hands and dialed 911. I need help, he screamed. My wife's been shot. She's pregnant. Please. The dispatcher tried to calm him, but he couldn't hear her. He dropped the phone, turned back to Jasmine, and cradled her head in his lap. I didn't mean to. I just wanted the truth. Her lips moved, trying to say something, maybe his name, maybe the baby's, but nothing came out. Her eyes fluttered shut. Then stillness. The flashing lights came fast, red and blue slicing through the darkness. Paramedics burst into the room. They pulled Caleb away, shouting instructions. Officers yelled questions he couldn't process. One of them cuffed him, shoved him against the hallway wall. She's pregnant, he kept shouting. Save the baby. Please just save the baby. They took Jasmine first, rushing her downstairs on a gurney, chest compressions already underway. Then came Aaron, zipped inside a black bag, the zipper closing like a judge's gavel. Caleb sat on the front steps in handcuffs, barefoot, blood on his arms, robe soaked with sweat. Neighbors gathered outside in robes and pajamas. Whispers spread like fire. The judge. The Morris family. Someone's dead. The same man who once sat on the bench passing judgment, now sat in a squad car with his head pressed against the glass, whispering a prayer to a God he wasn't sure could still hear him. At the hospital, doctors fought for Jasmine's life. But the bullet had torn through her lower abdomen and ruptured her uterine wall. She lost too much blood. Her heart stopped twice on the table. They saved the baby. A boy, born 7 weeks early. Underweight, not breathing at first. They named him Malachi Elijah Morris, just as Jasmine had wanted. But she never got to hold him. She died hours later, alone in the ICU, her wedding ring still on her finger. Months after Jasmine's passing, as her family sorted through what remained of her life, boxes of baby clothes, half-filled notebooks, and a stack of letters she never mailed, they found an envelope tucked beneath the drawer of her nightstand. It was addressed in looping handwriting, careful and soft. To my son, if I don't get to meet you. They didn't open it. Instead, they sealed it again and gave it to her parents, who would later give it to Malachi when he turned 13. But inside, beneath the paper now slightly yellowed, was Jasmine's voice, still warm, still present. My sweet Malachi, if you're reading this, it means I didn't get to say hello, or hold you, or sing the silly songs I made up just for you. I want you to know this first. You were loved. From the moment I felt your tiny heartbeat, you were the center of my world. You made me laugh when I wanted to cry. You made me brave when I was afraid. You gave me purpose I didn't know I needed. Your father, Caleb, he's complicated, but he loves you so much. If he ever seems distant, it's not because you did anything wrong. It's because life taught him to protect himself in ways he never learned to undo. But I've seen the way he touched my belly when you kicked. I've seen him cry when he thought I couldn't hear. I've seen him hope, Malachi. That hope is yours now. You come from strong people. People who made mistakes, yes, but people who tried. And I hope you grow into a man who forgives, who feels deeply, who listens before he judges, and who never lets fear be louder than love. I'll be watching. Somehow, some way. I'll be there. In your smile. In your questions. In the way your heart beats strong, even when the world is quiet. With all the love a mother can give. Mom. Caleb was charged with second-degree murder and manslaughter. The courtroom where he once presided was now where he stood in shackles. His former colleagues sat grim-faced as the indictment was read. Some avoided his eyes. Others couldn't stop staring. He said nothing in court. His lawyer urged him to plead insanity. Said the stress, the paranoia, the emotional strain, all of it would support diminished capacity. But Caleb refused. I knew what I was doing, he said. I just thought I was right. The trial made national headlines. The judge who lost control. From the bench to his cell, the Caleb Morris tragedy. Love, jealousy, and blood, a family destroyed. The prosecution painted him as controlling, obsessed, violent. The defense portrayed him as broken, betrayed, unraveling under pressure. But no one, not a single witness, could explain how the man known for justice, for calm deliberation, for fairness had turned into a killer. The footage from his home surveillance system was played in court. It showed Jasmine laughing, Aaron helping with chores, small interactions that looked perfectly innocent. And when the letter was introduced, the one Caleb had found in the book, the handwriting expert confirmed something that turned the room ice cold. It wasn't Jasmine's handwriting. It belonged to Aaron. A joke. A teasing note written during a game of charades weeks earlier. Caleb had never read the whole page. He'd just seen the sentence and snapped. That revelation crushed whatever hope remained. The verdict was swift, guilty. He was sentenced to 35 years to life. No chance of parole before 25. As the judge read his sentence, ironically, from the same bench Caleb had once ruled from, he didn't cry. He just nodded. When asked if he had anything to say, Caleb looked toward the gallery, where Jasmine's parents sat holding baby Malachi. I thought I was seeking justice, he said, but I was running from my own fear. I failed as a husband. I failed as a man. But most of all, I failed her. He was taken away in chains. And for the first time in decades, Caleb wasn't a man of the law. He was just a man who had lost everything. Prison was cold, but not in the way people imagined. It wasn't the concrete or the metal beds or the lack of sunlight that chilled Caleb to his bones. It was the silence, the kind that crept in late at night, after the lights went out, when the echoes of screams and footsteps faded into stillness. That was when the memories returned. Jasmine's voice, her laugh, the warmth of her belly beneath his hand. The day she told him, tearfully and joyfully, that they were having a boy. Now all was gone. All that remained was a rusted bed, for gray walls, and the unrelenting voice inside his head whispering, "You did this." He received no visitors. Jasmine's parents refused contact. Aaron's friends posted his face across social media, calling Caleb a monster. Former colleagues on the bench wrote op-eds distancing themselves, some expressing pity, most disgust. But then, 6 months into his sentence, he received an envelope in the mail. No return address, just his name, in delicate handwriting that stopped his breath. Inside was a letter and a small leather-bound journal. The letter read, "Judge Morris, this journal was found among Jasmine's things. It was passed to me through the estate process. I thought perhaps you needed to read it more than anyone else. Dr. H. Reese, LCSW. Jasmine's therapist." Caleb held the journal like it was made of glass. His hand shook as he opened the first page. The entries began months before the tragedy. Most were short, reflective, sometimes funny. She wrote about her pregnancy cravings, her dreams, her fears of being a mother. Then came entries that pierced him like a blade. Caleb doesn't laugh the way he used to. I think he's carrying things he won't talk about. I want to help him, but I don't know how. Aaron has been helping around the house. I think it's been good for Caleb, though sometimes I see something shift in his eyes when we talk. I don't know what he's afraid of. Today, Caleb looked at me like I was a stranger. I didn't recognize the man in front of me. I wonder if he still recognizes himself. But then, one entry, dated 3 days before her death, changed everything. Aaron confessed something strange today. He found a letter I wrote as a journal prompt during therapy and thought it might upset Caleb. So he burned it. He said he didn't want to cause trouble. But now I wonder if Caleb already suspects something. I have to talk to him. Soon. Caleb's breath caught. The letter he'd found. The one that triggered everything. He had never read it in full. He had found a fragment, out of context, and let it ignite his paranoia. And Aaron had tried to protect him. The truth was never hidden. He had just refused to see it. Caleb sat in that prison cell, gripping the journal against his chest, sobbing until his chest hurt. For the first time since the verdict, he wept not from fear, not from rage, but from shame. He had loved Jasmine. He had loved his unborn son. He had loved his brother, and he had destroyed them all. Weeks passed. He began writing letters to Malachi. Not to be sent, not to be read, just to speak into the void. You were born into the worst moment of my life, and still, I hope you carry none of my darkness. I didn't deserve your mother. I didn't deserve her light. But you are all that's left of her, and I pray this world is kinder to you than I was. In the prison chapel, he began to volunteer, cleaning, organizing books, sitting alone in the pews, whispering apologies to a God he didn't expect to answer. Sometimes other inmates mocked him. Sometimes they didn't. Everyone in there had regrets. But not everyone had killed the best thing that ever happened to them. One day, a young pastor visited the prison, new to the rotation. After the service, he approached Caleb. You used to be a judge, right? The man asked. Caleb nodded slowly. I heard your story, the pastor said, and I read Jasmine's. Her father wrote a piece about forgiveness in her name. Caleb looked up, startled. He said, he's raising Malachi to know who his mother was, and who you were, not just what you did. Caleb's voice cracked. Why would he do that? The pastor smiled faintly. Because Jasmine would have wanted her son to know that love isn't erased by one mistake, even a terrible one. That night, Caleb wrote one last letter. To Jasmine, I finally understand that love without trust becomes fear, and fear, left unchecked, becomes violence. I will carry your name on my back for the rest of my days, not as a burden, but as a promise to never forget what love looks like when it's whole. He folded the letter, placed it inside the journal, and closed the cover. The years crawled by one, season by season, day by identical day. The walls of cell block D never changed, but Caleb Morris did. He entered the prison as a disgraced judge, full of guilt and rage, desperate to justify the unjustifiable. Now, 10 years in, he was just a man with gray in his beard and trembling hands who spent most mornings wiping the dust off prison library books and most nights reading letters he'd never sent. He had become something of a ghost in the prison. Inmates respected him, not because of who he had been, but because of how he carried the weight of what he had done. He didn't lie about it. He never denied it. He didn't excuse it. That earned him something few men behind bars ever find, a quiet kind of grace. He taught literacy classes twice a week, helped some of the younger inmates write appeals, taught them how to structure arguments, find their voice. They'll never listen to me, one young man told him. They will, Caleb replied softly, if you speak like you believe you still matter. That was the irony. He'd once handed down sentences. Now, he helped others try to escape them. It was a Tuesday afternoon, just after the literacy class ended, when one of the newer inmates lingered behind. Name was Trey, 19 years old, skinny, angry, always sitting in the back with his hood up. Caleb was erasing the whiteboard when he heard him speak. Can I ask you something, Judge? Caleb turned, surprised he even knew his name. Sure. Trey hesitated, then said, If someone hurts the people you love, really hurts them, would you be wrong for hurting them back? The room went still. Even the overhead fan seemed to pause. Caleb didn't answer right away. Depends, he said softly. What kind of hurt are we talking about? My brother, Trey said, voice tight. Guy who raised me. He was jumped. Some gang stuff. They beat him half to death. Cops didn't do nothing. I know who did it, and you want to get back at them. Trey nodded, jaw clenched. I don't care what they say in therapy. Some things, only blood makes it even. Caleb stepped closer, pulling out a chair and motioning for Trey to sit. He did, reluctantly. I used to think like that, Caleb said. Thought if I could just make the pain stop, if I could force the truth out of someone, I'd feel better. Like justice would be done. Did it help? Trey asked. Caleb looked at the floor, then back at the young man. No, he said. It made everything worse. I thought I was strong, but I was just scared. I thought I was protecting someone, but I destroyed the very people I swore I loved. Trey frowned. So what? Just let them get away with it. No, Caleb said firmly. Don't let them turn you into who you're not. Be better than the pain, stronger than the anger, or else they win twice. Trey didn't say anything for a long moment, and he looked Caleb in the eye. My brother used to say that. Don't give them your soul, too. Caleb smiled faintly. He sounded like a wise man. He was. Trey stood. Maybe I'll come to your class next week. Caleb nodded. I'll be here. As Trey left, Caleb sat alone for a moment, staring at the chair the boy had just vacated. He saw himself in that kid, decades ago. Same weight behind the eyes. Same fire. Same fork in the road. And for the first time in years, Caleb didn't feel like a man just serving time. He felt like a man, maybe doing something that mattered. Caleb had one picture taped to the wall above his cot. It was a printout, faded with time. A hospital photo of a newborn baby wrapped in a blue blanket. Malachi, the boy had survived. Jasmine's last gift. Over the years, Caleb received updates. Not directly, but through third parties. A sympathetic social worker. A retired court clerk. Quiet people who hadn't forgotten who he once was, and who believed a man serving life still deserved to know something. Malachi was healthy. Smart. Quiet. He liked books. Played piano. Asked a lot of questions. He lived with Jasmine's parents in Atlanta. He didn't know much about his father, only that his mom had loved him once. On the 10th anniversary of Jasmine's death, Caleb did something he hadn't done since the trial. He cried out loud. He cried in chapel, alone, beneath a stained glass window that leaked soft morning light onto the concrete floor. He didn't cry for sympathy. He cried because grief, when buried for too long, rots into something heavier than sorrow, numbness. That day, he wrote a journal entry. They say time heals. I disagree. Time just teaches you how to carry the pain more efficiently. One winter morning, a counselor named Ms. Hartman stopped by his cell. She'd been observing his group therapy sessions for months. You've become kind of a lighthouse, she said gently. Men here look to you. You know that, right? Caleb chuckled dryly. A lighthouse that once led ships to crash. She hesitated, then said, there's a program starting, recorded reflections from inmates for juvenile intervention classes. They're looking for someone who can speak from experience. Caleb looked up. You want me to tell kids not to become me? I want you to tell them the truth, she said. Not because you were a judge, but because you're a man who destroyed what he loved most. That night, Caleb sat in front of a microphone in a tiny prison classroom. He stared at the blinking red light, then began to speak. My name is Caleb Morris. I once wore a robe and held a gavel. People thought that meant I understood justice, but I didn't even understand myself. His voice cracked. I let fear and pride drive me. I mistook suspicion for truth. I let a moment of weakness rewrite the rest of my life. He paused. I killed my brother. I killed the woman who carried my son, and I live with that every single day. So if you're listening to this and you're angry or you're afraid, talk to someone. Ask questions. Step back before you pick up something you can't put down. The recordings reached classrooms across Georgia. Letters trickled in from teachers from teens. Some confused, some curious, some deeply moved. One letter stood out. My name is Malachi. I think I'm your son. Caleb dropped the paper. He read it again. slowly, trembling. Malachi was now 14. He had found his mother's journal. He had questions. He didn't promise forgiveness. He didn't say, "I love you." He said, "I don't remember you, but I remember her. And she wrote about you like she believed you were more than what you became." That letter stayed folded in Caleb's shirt pocket for weeks. He didn't reply. He didn't know how. But every night after that, he sat in his cell and whispered one word into the dark, just loud enough for God, or Jasmine, or maybe Malachi to hear. "Thank you." The morning light in cell D14 was softer than usual. Or maybe Caleb had just learned to see it that way. He sat at a small desk, scratched, faded, familiar, and unfolded a fresh sheet of paper. His hands, though slower now, still moved with quiet precision. This was the letter he had waited 10 years to write. Not for the courts, not for reporters, not even for Jasmine's family. This one was for Malachi. "Dear son, by the time you read this, you'll be older than I ever saw your mother again. That fact alone breaks me in ways I can't explain. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to understand me. But I want you to know who I was before that night and after. Because your story didn't start in tragedy. It started in love. Your mother was the best person I ever knew. Not perfect, but strong, brilliant, and kind in ways I didn't deserve. She believed in people. She believed in me, even when I had stopped believing in myself. I let fear eat away at that belief. I let pride silence her voice. And in a single moment of weakness, I erased everything we were building. And yet, here you are, living, breathing, carrying her name, her hope, her light. You are proof that something beautiful can survive even the darkest chapters. I have nothing left to offer but this truth. If you carry anything from me into your life, let it not be my anger or my judgment or my shame. Let it be the lesson I learned far too late, that love is not about control. It's not about knowing everything. It's about listening, trusting, being brave enough to be wrong and still show up anyway. This story should have ended differently. You should have been raised by both of us. You should have known your uncle as a goofy, kind-hearted soul. You should have seen us laughing around a dinner table, not printed across newspaper headlines. But you still have a story to write. And if even one line of it can rise above the mess I left behind, then maybe, just maybe, that will be enough. With love and eternal sorrow. Dad, Caleb folded the letter with care. He handed it to Ms. Hartman the next morning. "Only if he ever asks for it," he said. She nodded. He already did. That was the last time Caleb spoke of Malachi. 3 years after Caleb Morris was buried beneath a plain plaque outside Cell Block D, a young man stood before a packed high school auditorium in Atlanta. His name was Malachi Elijah Morris. At 17, he had his mother's eyes, his grandfather's posture, and a voice that quieted even the most restless students. He stood behind the podium holding a worn, leather-bound journal, his mother's. In the audience sat teachers, classmates, counselors, and strangers. The event was a statewide youth summit on grief and resilience. Malachi took a breath and began. "I was born the day my father's life ended. I grew up with silence instead of stories, with questions instead of memories. But somewhere along the way, I realized silence doesn't have to mean shame. My mom, Jasmine Morris, believed in light. And my dad, despite everything, left behind a truth I still carry. That fear can look a lot like love when you're afraid to lose. But real love is honest. It listens. It waits. It forgives. This is for anyone who's ever been broken by someone who couldn't see their own reflection clearly. You are not their mistake. You are your own beginning." He closed the journal. The crowd sat in stunned silence before the applause rose like a tide. Malachi didn't know what would come next. College, maybe. A book. Maybe just more questions. But one thing was certain. He would not write his life in fear. 3 years later, Caleb Morris passed away quietly in his sleep. No final breath. No last words. Just silence. He was buried in a plain grave just outside the prison walls, marked with a simple plaque. Caleb E. Morris, 1959 to 2037. A man who never stopped learning how to say sorry. But this isn't just Caleb's story. It's Jasmine's too. and Aaron's, and Malachi's. It's the story of a man who had everything: love, family, respect, and lost it all in a moment of fear and misjudgment. It's the story of a woman whose voice was silenced before she could be heard. It's the story of a child born into grief, but still carrying the possibility of grace. It's a reminder that rage doesn't need a reason, just room to grow. And that love, real love, can only survive where honesty lives. So if you're still watching, if you're holding on to resentment, if you're afraid to ask questions, if you're letting silence do the talking, let this story be your pause. Before the yelling, before the fists, before the trigger, let this story be the moment you choose something different. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe. It helps us keep telling real stories that matter. Because sometimes just one story can stop someone else from writing the wrong ending.